I'm told it started to snow just after midnight. And by 6 a.m., there were 4 inches of snow on the ground and the body of James O'Connor. The city of New York came and picked up O'Connor before the sun rose. It would take them many days to get the snow off the streets. I was 2 blocks away in apartment 53 at 1039 Simpson Street when my alarm went off at 7 a.m. It took me a while to get out of bed, and it took the sun 4 more minutes to rise. My mom and my sister had already left for work. I stood by the stove next to the window, pouring Wheaties, the breakfast of champions, into my cereal bowl, and I looked out the window. Oh, I'm not going to school today. There's a lot of snow out there. The good Dominican nuns can do their thing without me. I haven't played hooky since October 8th. I don't know why October 8th. I took the day off to watch the World Series. And what did I get? Don Larson pitching a perfect game. Wow, did I win? Today was going to be one of those days. I had another winner day on my side. It was a big day. And around 9 o'clock, the phone rang. And right away, I knew who it was. It was Joe. Joe and I met on the first day of kindergarten, and we were best buddies. This was a big year for us. We were each turning 13. Joe was going to be 13 on Friday. I had been 13 for a month already. And being 13 was very important in the United States in 1956. We had James Dean in the movies. We had Blackboard Jungle. We had a new DJ, Dick Clark, on a show coming out of Philadelphia. The Yankees won the World Series. Man, this was the perfect time to be a teenager. Joe's call didn't surprise me at all. The reason for Joe's call did. His father had died on his way to work during the night, and Joe had to go down to Lincoln Hospital to identify the body. Could I meet him at Southern Boulevard and Westchester Avenue in 10 minutes? Joe, I'm there. This being a teenager is so much different. Little kids never imagine they're going to go and identify a body at Lincoln Hospital. So I got my coat on, I found a hat, and I rummaged in the closet and found my father's rubbers, and I put them on over my shoes. I stuck my head into the hallway and yelled towards my father's bed, "I'm going out!" And out I went. Joe and I met at the corner of Southern Boulevard and Westchester Avenue, and it started to snow again. It was a cold, wet snow and a cold, wet day, and no buses were running. And we got colder and colder until we got smarter and smarter and decided to walk to Lincoln Hospital. Luckily, we only got about 3 or 4 blocks before we managed to haul in a bus and take the bus. But getting on the bus changed everything, because now we had nothing to do but sit there and think, what will we find at Lincoln Hospital? Lincoln Hospital was built in 1899 as the Colored Home and Hospital. Early in the 20th century, the name was modernized to Lincoln Hospital. And in 1956, Lincoln Hospital was as destitute as its patients. When Joe and I got there, we walked up to the information desk and asked, "How do you identify a body?" And the woman said, "Was he a DOA?" We don't know. So she told us, go over there and sit on that bench. We weren't on the bench a minute when a cop comes up and says, what are you two doing here? Joe told his story, but I asked the important question, what's a DOA? So the cop took us along a corridor, opened the door to a landing which only had stairs that went down. And he said, go see the guy at the desk down there and tell him you're here to identify a DOA. So down we walked. The basement was cold and wet, and the walls were green like they had originally been painted, and any place where they had been replastered over the years, they had never been repainted. And the wet floor was as cold as my feet were. The guy took us into a room where all the dead people were laying on tables with their heads covered like they're cold and their feet sticking out at the bottom. You could tell who was Mr. O'Connor immediately. He was twice as big as anybody else in the room, alive or dead. When they pulled the blanket back from Mr. O'Connor's face, I realized that's death. Because Mr. O'Connor was red all the time. He was about to explode if he wasn't exploding. And now he was the gray of stone. I knew what a dead person looked like. Under the table where his body was his black lunch pail laying on its side. Joe asked for the lunch pail. The attendant said, son, call a funeral parlor, get this body out of here today, and ask them for the lunch pail. I can't give you nothing. Joe and I were beat. We went back out to the bus stop across the street and leaned against the factory as the wind from this snowstorm beat us up. We were freezing. Joe said to me, why they had the motorman's hat on my father's head like that, half on his head and half on the table? Not much of a question you can answer there. We stood there freezing and shivering in our wet feet until a bus came and we got on it. And we sat next to each other, shivering and shaking and shivering, and the snow beat against the bus. And Joe complained about the hat again. Why did they put that hat on my father's head, half on his head and half on the table like that? I didn't have anything to say to that. The third time Joe complained about the hat, he started to bitch about the lunch pail. I was done with this. I just watched the snow beat the bus and the bus shake back and forth along Southern Boulevard. I got off at Southern Boulevard and Westchester Avenue. Joe stayed on to Southern Boulevard and 167th Street. The next day, the New York Times said 8 inches of snow had fallen, the most in New York in any December since 1938.